morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. I'm glad you tuned in again to watch the show. And for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting guests, like most of you out there, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is that we've decided to talk about. And tonight, my guests and I are going to be talking about fluoridation and other things related to fluoridation. And to my right is Rick North, who's been on the show 3,000 times in the past 10 years. Thanks for coming on, Rick, again. And his compatriot here, Bill Osmundson.
Correct. Yes.
And if you know this guy, you're going to be a good guest for sure.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be here with you, Dr. Don.
So, Bill knows the routine here. We'll do it abbreviated for him because my guests have seen what he's like personally, but they don't know who you are. So we're going to ask some probing questions of you.
Okay.
So the show goes in two major segments. The bio segment, which is who you are personally, so the guests have an idea where you're coming from when you have your views and opinions about important things like fluoridation. And then the second half of the show is usually about the topic that we're discussing, fluoridation. Depending on how much time we spend on the personal aspect and how important the second segment is as to how much time we spend in each half. So shall we get started? And let's let you start off, Bill. And of course, this is a mutual discussion here. I'm not the boss. We're all three involved in making a good show. So good. If you want to intervene or say, I don't want to answer that question, tell me to get lost or something, all right? Okay. Don't start.
Oh, I promise. I'll be good.
All right. Shall we start with the trick question, the first one for you?
You hit me with a trick question every time. Why should today be any different?
If I would ask your best friend, who is Rick North, what would your best friend say?
I can't use that kind of language on cable TV.
I'm leaving.
Are you kidding? Oh my
gosh. Roger, help me over here. What would he say or she say?
What would they say? Mm-hmm. I think fun-loving when I have the chance. I think I like to get involved in issues, and when I do get involved in issues that I believe in, I really get involved, like this one. Like this one. The third thing, kind of a look-alike for George Clooney. That's about. I think those are the three that come to mind right away.
That's enough.
Yeah, that's enough.
That's
Okay,
yeah. So, when and where were you born?
I was born in 1949 in Irvington, New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Yes.
You lost your Jersey accent.
Well, I was only there 6 months and we moved to upstate New York.
You should have mastered it before you left.
I should have, yep.
Anything significant about your cultural heritage that's worth sharing with the viewers?
No, part Austrian, part English, Scotch-Irish from two sides of the family. Nothing, we didn't, party like, some ethnic groups, but we did all right.
This boring American white brain.
Yeah, pretty boring.
How about a religious preference? Is that a fair question? You don't have to answer that.
I'm happy to answer it. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and I go to the first Unitarian church downtown. It's a wonderful place and wonderful people, and it's a beehive of activity. People are getting involved in all kinds of good causes.
Bunch of socialists, aren't they?
Only 70–80%, I'd say.
Only 70%. I went to Cuba through them.
Oh, did you?
Yes,
great.
Indeed. A wonderful time in Cuba. That's another story. And your formal education?
You
did go to school,
I did. I went to high school in upstate New York, a little town called Sydney. Went to college at small college in Ohio, Mount Union, which is now known for a tremendous Division III football team that's almost always in the national championship.
Got to get your sports in there, don't you?
Yeah, I sure do. And I went to grad school for my master's at Akron University in Ohio.
Yeah. You have a partner, a boyfriend, girlfriend?
A wife. My wife, Holly. 2 kids. Michael works for the Portland Trail Blazers, actually. And my daughter, Tanya, back east at the Chesapeake Bay in Baltimore. She works for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation doing environmental education.
That sounds good, yeah. And your political persuasion? Are you a tea bagger?
Oh, we're not going to get into that today because fluoridation just crosses right over. It's not really a political issue, so I'll leave that.
How about memberships in political, social, or civic organizations that would be of interest to our viewers?
You know, right now I'm just
PSR
retired.
For a while.
I was with Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility for 7.5 years before I retired last year. And I was the director of a program that got me on this program called the Campaign for Safe Food.
That was a great show we did.
And we took on the issue of genetically engineered foods. You know, another nice non-controversial subject, and we had studied the science on them intensively, and we did not think that they were demonstrated safe for human health or the environment, and we said so. So I ended up doing programs here and all over the country on that. So it was a great job, a great organization.
Yeah, you done good too.
Oh, thank you.
How many times have you been on the show? No, don't answer that. Many times. So let's move over here to Bill Osmondson. And you have an idea what I'm going to ask you?
Well, I don't know if they're the same questions. Maybe they'll be different.
Trip you up, different questions. So when and where were you born, Bill?
I was born in Lincoln, Nebraska, 1950.
Nebraska.
Yep.
How far away from Omaha is that?
I have no clue. I left when I was 1 year of age.
Guys, leave home early, don't you?
Yeah.
And where'd you go to then?
Florida.
Florida.
For just a couple years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then I moved to Africa. So I was in Africa for 7 years and grew up mostly in Africa, had a wonderful time.
What part of Africa?
Kenya, and also what used to be Rhodesia.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. And how old were you in that time frame?
From 5 years of age to 12 years of age.
Oh my gosh, I bet you've got some delightful memories and stories.
I got stopped by the police when I was driving a car when I was 10. I owned my own car when I was 11. Started driving when I was 7. It was wonderful. There's just take off in the bush and drive and go to the game parks and have the lions nuzzle up against the car, and it was great. Yep.
There's a bunch of you guys still driving around Portland. Occasionally I run into them, or they run into me. That must have been wonderful. I'm going to interject something here. Have you heard of the elephant whisperer?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's fantastic, terrific. It's this guy who's European who has a preserve in Africa.
Oh yes, yes. I did hear about that.
Google the elephant whisperer. There's a brief video about his work with elephants that are considered rogue and dangerous, and they're going to kill them. But they heard about him. He has a way of communicating with elephants like no one else has. And they send these dangerous elephants as a last resort to him. And he manages to communicate and connect with them.
They're
and he
wonderful animals. Wow.
When I was reading the email, it was so moving until I cried.
Yes.
Google it, The Elephant Whisperer. The first issue of the book that he wrote was all gone except for one copy left in London. And I sent for it because I wasn't interested in a later issue would have some additions or whatever. And I got it about 10 days from London, and I read it, and my wife's reading it now. But anyhow, enough about the story.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
But there must be something very unique about your character, personality, having spent those years in that part of the world.
It opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Yeah. What comes to mind first?
I wanted to go and help people in public health, in prevention of disease. I saw a big need in Africa for that. So that's where I got my education, was in public health first. And then after I was in the United States for a while, I realized that we have more public health needs here in the United States than we do in Africa. It's just different kinds of public health needs. For instance, when I was in Nairobi last, I was watching the people walking along. How many obese people did I see? None. There's more malnutrition here than there is there. It's
That's
just
a pretty,
different kind.
pretty broad statement. That's
Yeah.
true, huh? Yeah, well, we can get going on that for an hour and a half, so let's
We could.
continue on. And anything significant about your cultural heritage?
Well, in Africa, my parents were missionaries, and my grandparents were missionaries, and that's what I planned to do also.
Uh-huh. And did you get sidetracked along the way? But that's my next question.
That's another story.
Do you have a religious preference today?
No,
You're a dentist?
I'm a dentist.
Look at your teeth.
Yes,
What those cost? No.
I have two son-in-laws who are dentists,
Uh-huh.
and they claim they were inspired to go into dentistry because of me, and I'm honored because of that. So they worked on my smile to make it nicer.
That's beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful. Yeah. Religious preference today.
you.
Do you have one today, a religious preference?
I'd say probably atheist.
Atheist or atheist? The one's a pejorative. You know.
Agnostic, but they say that agnostics are just atheists, but they won't admit it.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope there's a God.
Uh-huh.
I just don't see a lot of evidence of that right around here.
What does she think about what you're saying about her now?
Well, I'm not sure what she's doing.
And certainly you've got a partner.
Yes, Marie. She is the president, CEO of Chez Marie, which makes veggie burgers in Wilsonville. And she's started up the business, doing great, making wonderful veggie burgers for Burgerville, for McMinimans, makes a beer patty and also a hemp patty for them that's wonderful tasting and has a great satiety value. She has makes them for Sherry's, and of course then Whole Foods and a lot of other grocery stores have her veggie patties. And she actually won or was awarded the Oregon Angel Award for a grant, or it's not really a grant, they purchased part of her business. She beat out a whole bunch of high-tech companies, and it was really wonderful what she's done in getting this business going, feeding the world wonderful food.
Wonderful. And she's still active and...
Oh, very active. Oh, incredibly active. Can't keep up with her.
Where'd she get that from?
She's a farm girl. Grew up on a farm and dairy farm, and dairy farmers work hard. Yep.
Yeah. How many children?
We have 4. 2 of them are married to dentists, and 2 of them are here in Oregon. One is a dentist in Lake Oswego, aesthetic dentistry of Lake Oswego. I work a little bit with him. Another dentist in Bellevue, Washington, aesthetic dentistry of Bellevue. And one of my daughters is an optometrist. 2 of them are moms. One of them is an esthetician. So we have quite a range of girls.
An esthetician.
Yes.
Oh, I'm betraying my ignorance. What the heck's that?
I don't know what that is either.
I'm not alone.
No, you're not alone.
As working a lot with skin and with facial and aesthetics of the face. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
They work with dermatologists and that type of thing.
Wow. Political persuasion. Are you left, right, center, or what?
I just re-registered independent, probably will go green, and then there's a good chance I'll vote a Democrat, but I'm still looking.
Justice Party. Rocky Anderson. That's
okay,
the guy.
I'll look at that seriously. I'll look at that
Yeah.
seriously because I know Oregon's going to go Democrat, so I don't know that.
So we're safe then.
Maybe I'll kind of wiggle the parties a little bit and go somewhere else for just a bit. But last time I voted for Obama.
Yeah, I voted for Nader.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we got another track we can follow, but we're going to leave that one alone too. Yeah. Are you still working now at all?
I am full-time in Beaverton. right next to the city hall, and I wanted to help a lower economic group, and so I do a lot of dentistry for those who are on fluoridated water and have tremendous dental needs.
Mm-hmm.
Lake Oswego's never had fluoridation, and there was just not enough business there in Lake Oswego for me, so I had to go to a fluoridated area where there's more dentistry needed.
Yeah. You're going to give me a business card when this is over?
Sure.
I want to keep you in track here, yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know if there's anything more I can ask of you personally before we slip over into talking about fluoridation, because there's so much going on with that. And I've been reading in the mainstream or the corporate media, both sides, so to speak, on the fluoridation issue. And I frankly don't know which side to come down on, because I'm a humanist and I'm supposed to be objective no matter what, keep my mind open. So
do you believe in freedom?
Go ahead, you know what I mean.
That's a simple question. Freedom of choice. Do you believe in freedom of choice? Fluoridation takes away that freedom of choice. It's easy to get fluoride. Fluoride's an easy thing to get. But do we want governments to take away our freedom of choice to choose whether to be medicated with a drug that's not approved by the FDA, that the FDA says is an illegal drug? Do you believe in freedom of choice?
Depending on what you're talking about. I believe I shouldn't have the freedom to choose to run a red light.
True.
So if you go generic and broad-based like that, we can take it any way you want to.
What about what goes into your body? Should you have the freedom to say no to a drug?
Should I have the freedom to say no to a drug, to fluoridation?
Fluoridation is a drug.
Or any drug.
You're an adult of sound mind.
That's questionable.
You're familiar with George Lakoff's Don't Think I'm an Elephant?
No.
You ever hear that book?
Yeah.
I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar.
I've read it.
Oh, yeah. It's framing the debate.
Okay.
It's deciding which way the discussion is going to go depending on the words that you choose. And you are setting me up with a series of questions so that I have no way out. You're leading me somewhere.
I'm trying to.
Yeah. Okay. So ask me your question directly, and I can, instead of hesitating, I can answer pretty quickly. Do I think the government should decide that I should ingest fluoridation or be forced to fluoridate my body? Is that the question?
Yes.
If research shows that it's going to have us survive as a society, as a species, then yes, I'm for the government deciding that.
The courts agree with you fully, but it needs to be a highly contagious disease for the protection, for the survival of the species. If it's our survival, then public health can quarantine people, they can separate them out of society, they can have tremendous police powers to protect us. But tooth decay is not something that's highly contagious. We're not going to die from tooth decay, or the slight difference that might be there that they're proposing. So freedom of choice is number one for me. We need to be giving people the freedom to choose. If they want to swallow fluoride, go for it. If they don't want to swallow fluoride, then they shouldn't be forced to to swallow it, because your kidneys may not work as well as others. And that's the big key for me, is we need to have the freedom of choice.
Freedom to choose whether or not you want to ingest fluoridated water.
Yes.
Fluoride.
Some people have problems with it. Okay. We shouldn't force them to have it regardless. We shouldn't force them to move.
Fluoride is not a nutrient. You know, mm-hmm. It's not like you need a vitamin D or something like that, or it's not something your body has to have, like, you know, to function without getting a disease. It's not a nutrient. It is a drug. And the point Bill was getting to, when you think of the protocols that a doctor will follow in prescribing a drug, it's for an individual. The drug is approved by the FDA. It's high quality. There is a specific dose that he or she prescribes. It is for a specific period of time. Mm-hmm. and the doctor explains the benefits, the risks, the side effects, and the patient has the right of consent. This is informed consent. So all those protocols a doctor is going to follow for the maximum safety and effectiveness. Okay, every single one of those protocols is violated by water fluoridation. Every single one. So when you think about it, you think this doesn't make any sense at all for fluoride or for any other drug.
Let's talk about what's going on locally here. That's provided the reason for this discussion that we've jumped right in the middle of before we had some preliminaries. So there's an issue now here in Portland about fluoridating the water, true?
Yes.
Yes.
And say some more about that and the two sides on that issue now that you know about.
Well, what has happened is there has been a very quiet behind-the-scenes movement going on for months and months, maybe up to a year, we don't really know for sure, to fluoridate Portland's water. And it's been kept very hush-hush. And it was only broken by a story in the Oregonian, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah. And that Randy Leonard, a commissioner in the Portland City Council, was leading this. And it was so, hidden that, none of us knew it. The public didn't know it. Even like the mayors, Tigard, Tualatin, Gresham, those cities all buy water from Portland. So if Portland fluoridates, there's no way to segregate the water. They're going to get fluoridated too in those suburbs.
So
they didn't know it either.
These are all cities that are in the Portland general metro area.
Yeah, and they didn't know it. They learned about it when the story broke in the Oregonian too. So it's been a very behind-the-scenes movement, and it's moved very quickly so that the vote is coming up September 12th. And right now, 3 of the people on the city council, Mayor Sam Adams and Nick Fish and Randy Leonard, have all said they're going to vote for it. So we are trying to get them to change their mind.
So this is a local issue for the Portland people, Portland, Oregon people, but you may find similar situations existing in your communities anywhere else and other parts of the country. So that's why it's useful to get some depth about what's going on here and why. Who's behind it?
Well, that's a good question, and you brought up a good point about the rest of the country, because it looks like, they say that Portland is the biggest city in the country that has not fluoridated, which is accurate. I just found out, actually, a couple of days ago, Wichita, Kansas, which is very close, also in the top 50. They are doing the exact same thing there. A little bit different political system there. They're bringing it to a vote in November. But it seems to be, we don't really know where the initial funding is coming from. We know that the Pew Group, who normally I've worked with them on antibiotic resistance issues. PEW, yeah. They seem to be putting a lot of money into it. Now, where they're getting their money, we don't know for this. It's Upstream Public Health, again, a group I would normally work with, have worked with. They have gotten a tremendous amount of money to do this. They've got staff people, a team of staff people working on this. It's a tremendous amount of money pushing this.
Who's going to benefit from, other than the citizenry, supposedly going to benefit? Who's going to benefit from fluoridating Portland's water?
Well, there are really 3 main groups.
Yes.
One, of course, is the people who sell the fluoride, the phosphate fertilizer companies. This is a byproduct of phosphate fertilizer manufacturing. And they have to spray water into the smokestacks to scrub those fumes out because they were causing environmental damage. And that waste product then has to be disposed of either in a hazardous waste site, or it has to be well, the solution to pollution is dilution, and so they just sell it to the water districts to put it in the water, and it can be diluted on out there. So the phosphate fertilizer companies make a tremendous amount of money off of this. I think that if we were able to follow the money trail, we would find some money coming from them, quite likely.
Name some of those companies. Olin?
Simplot, Mosaic. But we're getting more
fertilizer companies.
Yeah, we're getting more and more of our fluoride from China and Japan because they don't fluoridate. They don't believe in this stuff, so they send their waste product to the United States for disposal. But there's another group on the money end of things, and that are the dentists. Okay, for 25 years as a dentist, I promoted water fluoridation. I really thought it was beneficial. I could see a difference on the teeth. And I felt it was beneficial. So dentists do support fluoridation as a group, at least in the United States. Now, most European dental associations are opposed to it. Most countries of the world, developed countries of the world, are opposed to it. But in the United States, where we have kind of a clique, a group that only looks at a certain part of the research, and we support fluoridation as a group. Partly it's because if we start actually showing people that fluoride is very, very hazardous, which it is, then when the patient comes on in to see me, they may not want to have fluoride treatments. And fluoride treatments are actually quite lucrative. Dentist doesn't have to spend any time on it, and they can make $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year on fluoride treatments if it's done in a marketing method.
What's the fluoride treatment?
When varnish or gels or different types of things are put on the teeth to harden the teeth. And there is some benefit to that according to some studies, but it's controversial also. And then of course the dental insurance companies, they're marketed the concept that for every dollar spent on fluoridation, they're going to save $38. So there's money in it for them, they think. But as they look at the research closer, they're finding that that's not the case. It doesn't save them money.
This just came up all of a sudden, huh?
It did for us, although the people have been working on it, for many, many months. This has been going on.
Follow the money.
Well, I do want to, I do want to challenge you on that a little bit.
Before you start, let's see if my director, Ellery, is going to yell at me for taking a break. Shall we take a break, Mr. E? All right, we'll take a break, and then the mics will be off in a few minutes, for us to catch our breath and prepare. Okay, thank you for staying tuned. I guess you got your drink of water or whatever, and you're back all turned on to watch the second half of the show and watch us have a fight here. Now, for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is that we have decided to talk about. And tonight we're talking about fluoridation and more about fluoridation. And I'm learning a whole bunch more that I didn't even know. But luckily, Rick told me this is new stuff, so I didn't have time to get to it yet. So let's pick up where we left off.
Well, you were asking about people's motivation, the money aspect. And yes, there are, certain companies and like that, there is a money aspect. But by and large, most people that believe in fluoridation, they're very well intentioned. They're not getting any money. There's no big conspiracy or anything like that. It's just they look at these organizations, these typical medical, medical association, the dental association, like that, and the federal government has said it's perfectly fine. You don't have to worry about it. So they look at all these, and all people, they don't have time to research every single topic that comes along. So they say, well, I've heard of these, and I respect them, these organizations and the government. They say it's okay, I think it's okay. And that is by and large, most of the, and that includes, I think, most of the physicians, most of the dentists, they're not going to take time to research this. That's just human nature.
Yeah, I fully agree. I didn't have any sort of conspiracy theory when I promoted fluoridation.
So
I was honest about it. It just, I didn't look at the research.
Yeah, and this is what got me involved, because for most of my life, I thought fluoridation was fine. I thought, okay, gee, I don't like cavities any more than anybody else, so it's fine. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago, someone I knew that I had worked for the American Cancer Society for most of my adult career, and what brought me to Oregon. I became the CEO of the Oregon division, and from the Cancer Society, and then later the Physicians for Social Responsibility. And this person thought, well, I work with doctors and scientists. I'm not a scientist or a doctor. I just work with them a lot, And I got called. Would you look at the science on fluoridation? And I thought, oh, this is going to be, my eyes will glaze over in my spare time, right? So, I'll do it. And I'll tell you, my eyes did not glaze over. They opened very wide because I could not believe what I was reading. Of all the health effects, and I'll tell you one of the things I read, and there's a visual for you. This is a report. I did not read the whole book, I will say that, but I've read a lot of sections of it, and I've read a lot of other things. Since that time, 5 years ago, I put in really hundreds of hours of study on this. This is a report from the National Academy of Sciences, which is considered the gold standard of scientific inquiry. And this is where they put together this blue ribbon committee of 12 scientists and a lot of people helping them to look at fluoridation, fluoride in water, and to come up with conclusions on whether the upper levels should be lowered as far as what's safe, which they did recommend that. But to look at this and see, and this was 2006, it was a landmark study. And just reading through this, and then, all kinds of red flags are showing up, whether it's, possibility of bone cancer in boys, osteosarcoma, thyroid problems, kidney problems.
Because of fluoridation?
Because of fluoride in the water.
Fluoride in the water.
Yes, and they're just raising these red flags. And I got a couple of quotes.
And good data.
Well, yeah, it's the best. And here are a few quotes from scientists that were on this committee. The chairman, I'll just read very briefly, the chairman, Dr. John Dool, the thyroid changes do worry me. We need to take a fresh look at fluoridation. Dr. Robert Isaacson, possible effects on endocrines and hormones are something I wouldn't want to happen to me if I had any say in the matter.
And these are all credible scientists.
These are the top, these are the cream of the crop. The report should be a wake-up call. Hardy Lineback from Canada. In my opinion, the evidence that fluoridation is more harmful than beneficial is now overwhelming. And finally, Kathy Thiessen, speaking as a scientist based on the information I've looked at, we're dealing with uncontrolled and unmonitored exposures to an agent that is known to have adverse effects on humans. I think you can look at most chapters of this book and say, whoa, these are 4 of the scientists out of the 12 themselves that are saying, look at this. Now, the premise of the fluoridationists is that it does benefit, it reduces cavities, and it does absolutely no harm, and that there is a consensus on that, and there's no debate, There's no need to even really discuss it. Done deal, okay? That is simply not true.
It seems to me the Portland people and city council and the mayor, you've found this, and it looks like a credible study report. How come they have missed this? How come
Well, we brought it to their attention. I mean, nobody's going to read this. Nobody has time to read this, and I understand that. You know, they're busy people.
But they should read it.
Well, they should, but it's, you know, somewhat technical. But the point is, you know, it's kind of like, as Bill was saying, it's like this echo chamber in the United States of these different medical organizations, again, who I mainly worked with through my career on the same side, saying this is great. But if you go outside the United States, most countries, you know, 196 countries in the world, 27 have fluoridation, and out of those, 11 only fluoridate more than 50% of their population. You go to Europe and look at the statements of their scientists and government officials, and they're looking at fluoridation and they're saying, no way. You know, they're not going to do it based often on medical and ethical grounds.
Why the difference between those countries in Europe and the U.S.? It doesn't figure. There's two different brain sets.
Partly it's language. They publish studies in their languages, and those don't get translated into English. Partly there's a concerted effort to promote policy. We had a very serious problem with the financial industry, crisis because of a lack of federal oversight regulatory.
Yes.
The same thing has happened in healthcare. There's not oversight regulatory regulation, especially of this fluoridation. Now, it's the EPA. Congress has said the EPA is prohibited from adding anything to water for the treatment of humans. Well, fluoride occurs naturally, so the EPA regulates naturally occurring fluoride. But when people add it to the water, then the EPA has a hands-off, they don't regulate that. Then the CDC says it's not our responsibility to determine the safety of
Centers for Disease Control.
Correct. They just follow the American Dental Association's role, or whatever the American Dental Association says, the Center for Disease Control Dental Division just follows that. The real organization with regulatory oversight jurisdiction, according to Congress, for substances used with the intent to prevent disease is the Food and Drug Administration. And the Food and Drug Administration testified to Congress, yes, fluoride is a drug. And the Food and Drug Administration said, we're deferring regulatory action because they'd have to regulate many, many hundreds of water districts and tell them to shut down. People have gone to the FDA to try to get approval. It's never been approved. Why? Because the FDA says it's not effective, it's not safe. So to circumvent the drug regulatory agencies, then then people who are promoting fluoridation will go to the city councils, and the city council then goes, I'm supposed to read this kind of stuff and come up with a decision? No, this is for the Food and Drug Administration to make the decision. The city council should contact the Food and Drug Administration, not try to make a scientific judgment.
So don't they contact the FDA, Food and Drug Administration? And what does the FDA say when they question whether or not they should fluoridate their water?
The Food and Drug Administration, when I ask for freedom of information requests from them, they say that fluoride, when used in water, is a drug. Water districts, to my knowledge, no longer contact the FDA. So,
unless there are some goofy citizens like you and Rick that comes along and says, hey, what the hell is going on here?
We're trying to convince them to go to the FDA and obey the law. That's what we're trying to do, and the city council is refusing.
When's the vote coming up? How soon?
September 12th.
How's it going to go?
Next week.
Well, it's not looking good right now, so we would ask, you know, it's looking like at least 3 out of the 5 people on city council are going to vote in favor of it. So we are trying to do everything we can to persuade people, inform them first, like, you know, what is happening here. And because a lot of people, I mean, it hit them just like it hit us, and is moving on such a fast track. And you mentioned before about you like to try to get both sides of the story from the media. I don't see our side getting out anywhere near as much as their side. They've got money, a tremendous amount of money. And honestly, some of those ads are, well, I'll give you an example of one. Well, two, you know, and this goes right together. The mayor, Sam Adams, put out a statement yesterday saying,
Mayor
you know,
of Portland, Sam Adams.
Mayor of Portland, right. And he said in a statement, every respected scientific committee or health organization that has reviewed the evidence on the safety and effectiveness of fluoridation has concluded that fluoridation is a healthy and effective public health practice. Every respected scientific committee or health organization, everyone. And they've got a television ad out with a doctor saying, fluoridation is supported by every major health organization. Every one, okay? Every one. And I'm looking at this, and I'm reading this from Sam Adams, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. There are all kinds of health organizations that do not support fluoridation. Either they have not taken a position, or they actively oppose it. So, I mean, you take a look in terms of no position at all, like my old employer, the American Cancer Society. They don't actively support it. They don't have a position. The American Diabetes Fund. Two kidney organizations, the American Kidney Fund, the National Kidney Foundation. Kidney Foundation used to till 2008, then they went back and said, no, we're not going to take a position because fluoridation really is bad news for chronic kidney patients. So there are all kinds of them here. As far as ones that oppose it, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, the Holistic Dental Association, and the Employees Union of the EPA itself. This is not the EPA, but the Employees Union of about 1,500. These are professionals, most of them scientists, toxicologists, biologists, chemists, other professionals. The union looked at this and said, no, there's no way. There are way too many red flags here. So it's just really how they can put this advertising out there, and it's just a mistake.
They only look at one side of the evidence, and they look with bias. We all are biased, and they look with bias to support their position. So they only look at the organizations that they respect. They respect the ones that support them. It's all when they get a committee together to evaluate fluoridation, they pick the members of the committee who are going to support their position. And of course, it's a little bit like saying we're going to get a group of Chevy dealers together and ask them which is the best truck. You know, it's a foregone conclusion. You know,
your analogy is very potent. Yeah,
and the arguments they're using often are based on low-income people. You're going to help the poor, you know, and this is, you got these poor kids and like that. Well, nobody that I know wants to be mean to the poor, you know, and, you know, allow them to have more cavities, anything like that. But, you know, when you look at this, wait, you know, suppose, for instance, it's known that babies, you know, infants like up to a year old, really too much, you know, fluoridated water can cause them to develop fluorosis, which is a mottling of the teeth. And it's really recommended.
Good research.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yes,
yeah.
There's no dispute on that.
Yeah, so you don't really want infants up to a year old, you know, drinking water or mixing infant formula with that. So suppose you are a young, you know, a couple, and you've got an infant, and you're poor. What are you going to do? You either have to buy bottled, you know, non-fluoridated water or distilled water. Buy this for your baby. That's a big expense, or get a filter, which, you know, very expensive to get fluoride out. You know, if you even know about it. You know, I mean, many young parents don't even know about this. Obviously, the best thing is breastfeeding, but you know, a lot of parents sometimes just can't breastfeed. So they're stuck. They're either, you know, they want their baby to be protected from fluorosis if they even know about it, and yet they're poor and they have to buy all this water to mix, and this is not helping the poor, not one bit.
Well, if I help the poor by being sure that their water is fluoridated and prevent their children from developing cavities, then I don't need to look at the huge disparity in the sharing of the economic pie and
the healthcare system, which
the healthcare system, and
Yeah.
you know where I'm going with this, yeah.
Yeah.
So then my conscience is solved, and I've done something for them, or I feel better. Have you appeared before City Council, either one of you, and argued your position on this?
Tomorrow?
We will be, yeah, there'll be a public hearing tomorrow. I actually did have a meeting with Randy Leonard. The mayor of Tualatin and I went in there, and there were two people from the opposing side there, and we had quite a spirited discussion for about an hour and a half, so it was very interesting. But
my hat's off to you. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And we got absolutely nowhere with that, with Randy Leonard on that. He was cordial. He invited us in, but it did absolutely nothing. You know, and the evidence we provided that, again, the central premise is that this is perfectly safe for other people. We presented example after example after example that this is not safe for many segments of the population, or there is serious question that it's safe. It did not seem to have any effect.
So where do you go from here? Tomorrow you're going to be at City Council?
They're having hearing tomorrow. We'll be there giving a presentation. Of course, the deck is stacked. Those in favor have time to give a forum, a presentation. Those opposed are given 2 minutes.
Yeah, if that, because they're going to, after 2 minutes, they're going to cut it down to 1 minute. So we asked to be on this forum. They're having this forum at 2 o'clock. And we asked for equal time. No, we're not getting equal time. And it is just the one side, that's it, that is going to be presenting.
This is government marketing their desire rather than having an open discussion, a policy of getting the stakeholders together and reviewing the information. That's not happening at all. This is just a railroad trucking on through in a hurry.
We've asked the other side for a debate. Let it be out in front of the public, an open debate. They've refused. Okay? Yeah. This is, I've called the website, you know, trying just to get basic information. I do not get my phone calls returned. So it is like this stone wall of, you know, hey, there's nothing to discuss here. And obviously there is.
What do they say when you talk about the European countries not wanting fluoride compared to the U.S.?
Well, here's what they'll say. They'll say, well, you know, the European countries, well, they've got salt, fluoridated salt. Well, out of, you know, well, the big thing there is that fluoridated salt, you can buy fluoridated or non-fluoridated salt in the supermarket. Again, it goes back to choice. You have the choice whether to put this in your body or not. It is not the forced, you know, that you've got to have water. And the second, well, just the second thing, you know, you're talking all of 5 countries in Europe out of 40-some countries in Europe that even have this fluoridated salt. This is not a big deal. But
yeah, and it's not used in commercial cooking. It's just for an individual use if a person wants to use it. And it's used a fair amount in France, but most of the other countries don't use it hardly at all. So, and in France, it used to be about 60% of people would buy the fluoridated salt. Now it's down to about 25%. So it's decreasing more and more.
The other one I heard just recently was, well, the European water systems, they're different than what we have here, so mechanically, they really can't do it over there. Well, the interesting thing about that is, well, most European countries never fluoridated in the first place, but there have been like about a half a dozen that were fluoridating before. And they have stopped. So obviously they had the capability to fluoridate because they were doing it, and they stopped.
Yeah, for instance, Germany fluoridated from 1950 to about 1951, something like that, and then they stopped. In other words, the Allies convinced them to fluoridate, and then as soon as they got on their own, they turned off the faucets. When East Germany and West Germany got together, East Germany was fluoridated, and as soon as they unified, one of the first things the West Germans did was go over and turn off the fluoride pumps. Why? Because they know it causes damage to the public. The West Germans didn't want the damage to the East Germans. If you're going to unify, let's give them health.
I feel sort of confounded here because what you're presenting seems like reasonable, well thought out examination and exploration and research, and you're not having any effect on the powers that be in our city government.
It is. I've never seen an issue like this, never in my life, because these organizations that are supporting it here, you know, I've been in public health nonprofits for most of my adult life.
Sure.
These are the same people, many of them, that I've worked with. You know, many of them I've worked with, and on the same issue, tobacco or GMOs or whatever.
You've had some degree of success in all these different ventures.
Yes, we have. And this one, you know, but what's interesting, if they study the science as individuals, if they just don't look at a list of organizations, if they actually study the science, then almost inevitably the same thing happens, just like what happened with me. Like, oh my gosh, you know, I never knew. Okay, I'm changing my opinion on this, so that happens. But again, most people, they don't have the time. They're busy, you know, and they don't have the time to go through this. I just happened to have a particular interest, and I took it.
Why don't we have some individual who's bright enough and smart enough to take this kind of information and the arguments you're making and put it in readable form so that the ordinary citizen can appreciate what the research is about, and what the outcome should be for reasonable, sensible people? Well,
there is that, and that's a website, and this is the Fluoride Action Network.
And Fluoride Action Network.
Yeah. It's
fluoridealert.org.
Yeah, fluoridealert.org. It is a tremendous website, and talk about scientific documentation. They've got it, but it's in lay language, and it just really lays it out there. It is a fantastic website.
Fluoridealert.org. Fluoridealert.org. We're almost through. Otherwise, we'd make a panel up and put it up on the screen. I had to remember that. So remember that out there, you viewers. Fluoridealert.org. Yeah, because we need to have more people arguing. For the first time in your career, you're going to have an issue that is not going to, you're not going to win, it looks like.
I never say die. Anything can happen. They have not taken that vote, and there has been a ballot initiative filed for 2014 in May. If we lose, yeah. So we can overturn this, but they're trying to fluoridate before then. So
if they decide to do it on the 12th, then and this coming May is when there'll be the ballot initiative.
No, that's not till 2014, and then we would have to get it signatures to even get it on the ballot. Yeah.
And then it'll be done, and you have to undo it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have a number of options we're looking at. See what we can do.
Bill, help.
Yes.
Okay.
You have some charts you were going to show?
I have some charts, but and we can look at some of them just briefly here.
Sure.
But we don't have too much time. On this one here, this is one of the first things that I did was to go to my toothpaste tube and pick it up and read the label. And one of the things it says on there is drug facts. Well, I know it's a drug. If I want to give you some fluoride to swallow, I write a prescription of it, you take it, you go to the pharmacy, and some of them sell the fluoride. And it says, do not swallow. Well, the question to me was, how much are the FDA concerned about that they don't want you to swallow? And they say a pea-sized amount. That comes out to be 1/4 milligram, about the same amount of fluoride as in a glass of water that's fluoridated.
So that's pretty hazardous. You've only got about 30 seconds left, and then we have to stop
the
you.
FDA says don't swallow. and the city of Portland says we're going to make you swallow the same amount that the FDA says don't swallow. The biggest concern and risk for me is the risk to the brain. There's good research come out, many studies showing that there's a risk to the human brain, and that is a real concern, especially to different subgroups, infants, probably the fetus, and the sperm and the egg before conception is harmed. The harm is going for 3 generations at least.
3 generations at least. All right, we need to stop here. We need another hour or so, but how about a closing comment to our viewers about what we discussed so far, and what kind of message you would like to leave with them about our discussion of fluoridation and the dangers and whatever, okay? Camera 3.
Okay. As a dentist for 35 years, I promoted fluoridation for 25, and I'm highly opposed to it. Please vote for no fluoridation. Contact the city for no fluoridation. The loss of brain IQ is very, very serious. The negative economic impact, I think, is worse than tobacco smoking.
Okay, Rick, 30 seconds.
Cleanwaterportland.org. Tell the city council to vote against this, and I will second that. Honestly, the thing we haven't had time to even get to, IQ. I worry more about the diminishment of intelligence of a whole generation of Portland kids more than anything else.
All right, so we're going to have to close. We got 2 minutes left, and I got to tell you about a few public service announcements so that you know what you need to be concerned about. There's my broadcast schedule to see when you can watch the show on television. And to get my shows on the web, go to my website, www.donbaird.com, and click on favorite links. There's many, many shows. Got to tell you about the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, because our civil liberties are under threat right now by the administration. Hooray for the ACLU. There's the website. And to get my shows broadcast regularly for you people watching in other parts of the country, go to www.pegmedia.org, www.pegmedia.org, and to learn how to end corporate personhood, which you've got to do, end corporate personhood, go to www.pegmedia.org. And we have one more here. Thanks for watching. My favorite thought for the day. Remember, KFC. Not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable. To you too. And you too, Bill. And you too, Rick. And you too, wonderful crew. Thanks again.